Well, welcome everybody. As always, I'd like to thank Angela Zakowski for everything she's doing on behalf of Vermont Apartment Owner Associations and the rights of property owners. My name is Brian Armstrong. I'm the operating principal of Keller Williams Vermont, as well as Strong Will Property Management. And we've got a great gentleman here today, John Abry from Vermont Virtual Tours. As a business owner who's got my hands in 4 or 5 different businesses, one of the things I learned early on is if you're in pain in your professional life, you are missing a who or a system. And what I'm excited about today, John, and thank you in advance for sharing your knowledge, is I think we've got a system here that maybe a lot of our members could benefit from using that could save them a tremendous amount of time over and over and over again. And Angela, I think you're going to be mentioning things about safety, stuff like that. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say, John, as well as learning how Strong Will Property Management can leverage your services to save us time, increase the safety for our people, and bring more value to our clients.
Yep. And just a quick reminder for folks, if you have a question or a comment, please use the Q&A function with Zoom. We monitor that portion of the platform.
Cool.
So,
all right.
Welcome,
well,
John.
Thanks, Angela and Brian. Just a little bit about me. I've been, the reason I know Angela and Brian is I have been a landlord for over 25 years. I've been a real estate agent for over 20 years. And as I was just telling Brian last December, I became, I hung up my license and now I'm doing this full time. And I also sold my apartment building. So now I'm done with that as well. This takes up all my time. I started this in June of 2020, back when we were all twiddling our thumbs, wondering what to do. It's actually March of 2020 when I started it. I was still an agent, and I thought, great idea for my listings. And so fast forward to today, I have scanned hundreds of properties, anything from 100 square foot pop-up bar system that the owner, with all his clients were telling him when they finally rented it, there's like, this is so much bigger, so much better than what you were showing me online. This is a great way to really show it. And then, now I'm doing over 1 million square feet of scanning for UVM, which is, definitely the biggest. I'm just trying to finish that up now, as a matter of fact. So I'm going to talk about 3 different things: long-term rental, AKA being a landlord; short-term rentals, which is like VRBO, Airbnb, and that kind of stuff. And also I'm going to talk about a little bit about commercial, anything from a small space to a large warehouse, manufacturing, retail, things like that. And also a little bit about how this can have an effect on your web presence as well. So moving forward, long-term rentals, which is probably what most of the people on the call are for. Who likes showing apartments? I always hated it. It was never convenient. Met some real winners along the way. And my God, the stories that I was told that I really didn't want to hear. Crazy. Who likes picking the best applicant? Even if you have someone doing this for you, a great deal of time can be saved, as a 360 virtual tour can quickly help a potential tenant determine if the unit actually meets their needs before they ever see it. You've got the ability to show, the number one thing I think is important is you've got the ability to show the apartment, the unit, whatever, without disturbing the current tenants. This reduces vacancy as it increases opportunities to have it rented in advance of the current tenant even leaving the apartment. They can see everything, everything. Why hide something that could be a potential issue down the road? Builds trust. So as you can see in this virtual tour, we can look and people want to know if it has a deck. They can see that. People want to know how many bedrooms it has, what the floor plan is like. They can look at that. How many floors are there? 1 or 2? There's so many ways you can utilize this. Not only that, there's a measurement tool inside, built in. So if you want to measure something, that's just an example, or stop. Or
Technology run amok.
Technology, yes. So how high is the ceiling? You can measure that. You can measure, is the sectional sofa going to fit in the apartment? Do I have room for my king size bed? Again, builds trust, shows the flow of the property. It reduces questions. Let me turn this off. So reduces questions. Does it have a back road? Is it back deck? Is it close to the road? Is there parking? You can go outside and see. Well, the quickest way is just go like this. Find the door.
So John, as a side note, one of the things I've liked about this, and I'm guessing it's the Matterport technology, is it's not the old load time that we used to deal with.
Exactly. And Matterport keeps coming out with more tools to use in here with AI. You can actually show all the measurements of the room right from the floor plan very quickly. And they have another release coming out October 1st, which we're all very excited about, which we don't know what it is yet, but we have some suspicions.
And
another thing it can prove to people.
I was just gonna say, John, unlike a video, and I know a lot of landlords or other folks will use videos, with a video, you're stuck with whatever the person that's shooting the video has done. With the virtual tour, it's everything, and it's almost like a self-guided tour through the unit or the property.
Exactly. That's a good point. So another thing this can do is give you a visual checklist. It eliminates that comment that was there when I moved in. You have a visual documentation that you can use, even if I think it would be usable in court if you needed it as well. That proves that the apartment is not as the tenant said it was. So you can't argue with that. And this saves time for everybody involved, right? Saves time for the tenant, saves time for the property management company or the landlord. And it saves time for the current tenants. You're not bugging them as well when you're showing the property. Next, talk about short-term rentals really quickly. There's basically three big players. As you know, Vacasa is probably the biggest by far. They claim improved differentiation among its properties and from the competition. Their listings with Matterport are browsed 3 times longer than just traditional pictures. And they see nearly a 12% increase in bookings, in rental bookings. VRBO does allow Matterport integration, which is great. Airbnb is not on board with that yet. I don't know why. I think both of them were challenged with people. They didn't want them to link out of their systems. VRBO figured that out with Matterport. So we'll see where Airbnb goes with that. Any questions on either of those, short-term or long-term?
I just have a quick question, maybe not quick. I have a couple questions. What's involved for you to come in and do one of these virtual tours, or anybody? What's sort of the process? How does this look?
It's the front end is the easy part, really, to be honest with you. As long as the apartment is empty, the property is empty. Depending on the size, it doesn't take that long to shoot it, to be honest with you. It's just the back end piece that takes the editing and the time, depending on what the client's needs are, because there's a lot of things you can add on top of this tour, not just the tour itself. You can include menus, you can include documentation, you can include video. Anything you can think of, you can put inside this virtual tour, and that keeps people on your site longer, builds more trust, and increases the chance of booking.
Okay. And so for longer term rentals, you would recommend property owners do that when the unit's vacant, as opposed to having
Yeah.
someone's things in it.
Most definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Unless you find a tenant that's willing to do that, that has what you want people to see. And the thing about it is 360 shows everything, shows absolutely everything. You can zoom in on the smallest things. I could read the books, the titles on the books behind
Okay.
you.
So from a safety and security standpoint, if you, that would make the most sense in long-term rentals in between tenants, because this is going to be out on the web, easy for people to access. With that level of detail, you wouldn't want to be showing somebody's personal
Correct.
personal property out there.
Yes. Yeah.
And
That's what I was
John,
told.
your long-term renter clients, are they doing sort of one master that they use for a reasonable period of time, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 rental cycles? Obviously, depending upon, is it accurate still, or was there massive damage done or stuff like that? Is that more of what you're seeing? Or are you seeing your clients, try to get one with almost every time?
Again, depends like on what you just said. Depends on the condition of the unit. You want to be as true to life as possible. So if the apartment doesn't change over a couple of years, that's fine. But if you're going to repaint the whole thing, or there was remodeling done, then you probably want to update it, most definitely. And that's another thing that this can be used for too, is remodeling. Like you just saw, all the measurements are there, and we can actually pull architectural files out of the model to give to an architect to work on remodeling your apartment building. It measures everything.
No, that's a great one.
So if you had, like, you were doing window replacements, you could conceivably take all of the measurements from this virtual tour
From the
for the
model, yeah.
windows, and not have to go in to bother your tenants or get in the unit for access to measure things.
That too, yes, exactly.
You guys, if hot pads works with you? Our property management does a fair amount with hot pads, but do you guys know if hot pads works with Matterport?
I honestly don't know. I don't know anything about hot pads,
Okay. Sort of like apartments.com,
right?
smaller competitor.
Yeah, well, CoStar is in the process of purchasing Matterport. So
Interesting.
they own apartments.com and a lot of other real estate sites. So, yeah, I can't imagine why it wouldn't work with hot pads. Like I said, with like Airbnb, their challenge is they didn't want people to leave their platform. Because that's why they don't allow you to put any links in Airbnb. I don't know if you've noticed that, or if you use Airbnb, but there's no external links on Airbnb. They want to keep you there. And if VRBO can figure it out, I don't know why they haven't yet. And I'm sure hot pads, I don't know. I've never looked on hot pads to see if there are virtual tours.
I haven't checked either. So one thing that comes to mind, and you may get to this, so if I get us too far ahead, don't hesitate to let me know. So one of the things I'm thinking of is we're all business owners. So there's a price point that comes to mind, what's worth it, what's not. My own perspective is my hopes would be I'd use it 3, 4 rental cycles so that we could, make the most out of the process. What do you typically, how does your fee structure work? How do you set that? Is it by the amount of bedroom, square footage? Talk to us a little bit about that and any maybe best practices that your clients have used to make the most of the technology while keeping it as accurate as possible.
Sure. Generally, it's by the square foot, but it's always on a case-by-case basis. I've found in my going on 5 years of doing this, that every property is different and there's so many different use cases involved. Before I ever start to talk about price, I find out what the real needs of the client are. What was your second question?
Any best
Best
practices and how to maximize, get the most out of working with you and your technology?
Mhm. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute because it's if you have a website, your own personal website, or if you use social media, this is a huge plus. Much better than pictures or video.
Mhm.
About that in a minute. Should I talk about commercial at all?
Sure.
All right. So, as you see behind me, it's a large commercial space. That was the 4th floor of the Winooski Mill. The thing that's spinning around here, 25 Green Mountain Drive, the old Green Mountain Power Building. So lots of use cases for commercial. It can boost sales and leasing through better understanding of the property. It's definitely improved market reach because you've got it. We live in a global market. We all know that, especially here in little old Vermont. We have people from all over the world living here. And with this, you can reach people around the globe and they never have to leave their home or office. It helps decision-making because it shows everything. Floor plan has the measurement tool. They can determine the feasibility of the property quickly. And like I said before, they have the ability to create architectural files for a remodel or fit up. Increased efficiency through fewer site visits and collaborations across all parties involved reduces time and cost for everybody involved. And you can see more of the property than you ever see on an on-site visit, because an on-site visit, you're basically just doing a walkthrough really quickly. With this, like I was talking about before, you can stop, turn around, look up, look down. You can check out every tiny piece of the property before you ever even go in. Anybody have questions on commercial? Just a quick view of that.
No questions so far.
The last piece I wanted to talk about is your website. This is an immersive and interactive tool that really draws people in. Instead of scrolling past all the pictures, once you jump into one of these, you're in it and you're likely going to look around some more. And it mimics the in-person visit, right? That's what we were talking about before. You can show the property without ever going in it, without bothering the current tenants. It helps build trust and interest in the property. It can improve your SEO performance by reducing your bounce rates, because it keeps people on your site longer. The average time on site is 3 to 5 minutes, which is a lifetime on a website. You know, the average website time is less than a minute. And when people share the photography, the 360 photography generates backlinks and social signals. And it can differentiate, can't even speak today, your business from competitors, shows you as an innovation leader, and prospective customers are more likely to choose a business that provides them with an in-depth and an interactive online experience, especially when dealing with similar products, right? It encourages visitors to interact with your content. Again, immersive versus scrolling. And it builds a connection with your audience, making them more likely to take action, and gives you higher conversion rates for your website. And it can be used across all kinds of digital platforms, websites, social media, email marketing, presentations. And the shareability means that satisfied customers can easily share your virtual tour with friends, family, increasing your reach and attracting new potential clients as well.
And John, it seems like that you would also have the ability for something like this if, you know, your property had a yard and tenants were able to use, you know, outdoor spaces, or, you know, if there was storage like in a garage or something, you could have all of that so people could get a full view of what the rental property looked like, and even to some extent what you can see from that particular property.
Exactly. The sky's the limit on what you can show, whether it's inside or outside. We have cameras now that it didn't used to be that easy to do outside, especially if the sun was shining, but now you can do inside and outside. As long as the camera can fit in it, we can scan it.
So I've got a question that my guess is everybody's thinking about right now. Can you airbrush? So if we have that, like, so one of the things I'm thinking of is you have a relatively clean tenant, you know, not super clean, relatively clean. You know, can you go in and airbrush out some of their stuff? I mean, we want it to be accurate, but we also know if I leave my old Burton sweatshirt on the, you know, the breakfast nooks, chair, is that's, can you do any airbrushing out within reason? Well, obviously want to keep it accurate and indicative of what it really is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we can edit.
Excellent.
That's not a problem.
What's, from, if we've got units, open and clean, what's the generally turnaround time from we contact you, you get to the property, finished work product?
Usually 24 to 48 hours,
Nice.
depending on the projects in the pipeline, but turnaround is fairly quick. And then it depends on what's involved in the project as well. With just a simple apartment, go in, scan it, come out, add anything you want, maybe do some editing, 24 to 48 hours.
Excellent.
Great, because I know that that can be one of the challenges with rental turnover is just the quickness in which landlords and property owners want to turn that property over, and realistically, many times there's advertisement and applications being reviewed and showings happening before the current tenant has vacated.
Right.
And so I think, it sounds like there's a component of perhaps a little bit of planning ahead. And so, if you get the virtual tour for right now, it may not be for this rental cycle, but maybe for the next rental cycle, depending on what's happening out in the market.
Right.
Angela, do you see any legal challenges if the property manager or property owner just says, hey, no, you're interested in XYZ street, we just ask that you confirm that you review the virtual tour or video beforehand, and we're going to ask that you reach out to us once you have to schedule the show? Because I'm just thinking there's people that I know I would want to save time and make sure they looked at this before I got in the car, before I asked maybe the current residents to make space. Thoughts,
Right.
questions, any issues with that?
As long as you're having the same process and doing the same procedure with everybody. And so it's not that you're not using it as some sort of screening tool that would run afoul of fair housing requirements. So if it becomes part of your process, look, we have everybody take a look at this virtual tour. It's completely accurate. It's maybe even more accurate than standing right there in the unit. If this unit still is of interest to you after you take a look at that virtual tour, please submit an application. I mean, there could be some level of pre-screening and then, application review. And then, if they want to put boots on the ground before signing a lease, they could do that. But I think one of the upsides to these virtual tours is they're so accurate that you almost don't have to do the in-person showings with them because of how sort of powerful and accurate this tool is. So
You mentioned a screening tool. It's a screening tool
again,
for a tenant as well.
Right. Right. It's a great way for a tenant to also be able to see if this is a unit I'm even interested in before they also perhaps go look at something that's not going to work for them. So it sort of supports both parties to that relationship for sure. So John, we did have a question that came up about using this tool for furnished rentals. Is there anything that is done differently or any impacts for overall pricing that makes it more challenging or more expensive to do these scans if a unit's furnished, or is it more the layout and what it's going to be used for?
More the layout, yeah. Because, I do a lot of short-term rental stuff, and that's all full of furniture. It's a little easier when there's no furniture in the way, but it really doesn't matter unless it's a hoarder, and then we've got problems. But no, it's not. It's pretty easy to do.
Right. But so it seems like, with a furnished rental, you're showing it as a new person coming in would walk into, because the furniture is going to be there, however it's set up is going to be there. With a furnished rental, how would this work for something like a kitchen? You know, is there an ability to open cupboard doors and look at what types of pots and pans and cutlery are in sort of the various drawers, or is this all sort of those items stay closed?
That would all be closed during the tour, but you could potentially open them up and take photos of each of those things and put them, like I was telling you, you can add anything inside the tour you want as an info point, whether it's a picture, a video, a document, anything you can think of, really, you can stick inside the tour. So if you wanted to show inside the cupboards and you wanted to show that there's pots and pans, you can do that. Show there's beer in the fridge. I don't know, whatever.
So we had another question come in that was related to the outside views. And the person was wondering if you can do the surroundings of the property, if there's a large amount of land, sort of how is that incorporated, or does that work?
Yeah, with the cameras we're using now, we can go right out the door and scan as much as you want. I don't have one I can pull up real quick, but inside or outside, we can scan it all. You know, if there's a path that you want to go down to the lake, or again, if you can think of it, we can scan it.
And what's sort of the general, I was thinking for, you know, outside, and again, it probably depends on terrain and topography and things. What's this general size view for an outdoor type of shot?
You can see as far as the camera sees.
Okay.
So generally outside, you've got to scan with no obstructions. You can scan every 15, maybe 20 feet and get a full unobstructed view. And again, you can see as far as the normal eye sees. It doesn't cut anything off. You see whatever the camera sees. That answer the question?
I think so. And I would think that that would maybe not run into a little bit of issues, but you also would want to be mindful, you know, if you're in a neighborhood and you're doing outdoor shots, right, because it's going to catch neighboring buildings and potentially through windows of neighboring buildings, or does that get blurred out?
We have the ability to blur anything out that might be, you don't want people to see, you know, anything. It actually has an automatic face blurring tool built into the software. So if you turn that on, it's so, actually, I usually turn it off because it will even blur photos. You know, like if you've got a painting on the wall of somebody, it blurs that picture as well.
Interesting.
Oh, wow.
But I can go individually. It'll actually give me a list of everything that needs to be potentially blurred. It has AI built in, it just kind of knows.
Excellent. And can you talk a little bit more about sort of the utility of using this tool for, you know, repairs or maintenance, or getting information to contractors if you have work that needs to be done?
Well, yeah, it's just an easy way to show people how to get into the property, where the issue might be. You can actually, there's a if you press the U button anytime you're in the tour, it will give you what's called a deep link. So you can go and find the spot that you want to be in that unit. Say you're looking at the sink or you're looking at the bathroom. Click that button, you click the U key, and it will give you a link to that specific spot, and you can email that link to somebody. So this is where it is, this is where the issue is. And you know, once they click on that link, they're in the tour. So then they can look around and see. It's not just that.
So, I mean, there could be some utility for something like that with existing tenants. If they're trying to explain to the property owner or the manager where an issue is, or what they're seeing as an issue, they could use that tool to then send to the landlord to say it's right here in in this area. So it could time save from that regard as well.
That's a great point.
Yeah, what I'm thinking right now is, talking with Dan, our property manager, and have him going through our units as they're available and adding the photos of the utilities, the services that you just talked about behind the doors so that we can more remotely help our contractor partners figure out the issues, get to the issues. Yeah, I can see a lot of value in this, as well as adopting some standard operating procedures, specific to the property owner, the property type, that could save a lot of time, a lot of time.
Well, and I think, John, I've heard you talk about this, and you may want to expand on this more, but if folks are renovating units as well, and particularly if they're rehabbing them back to the studs or with new builds, they can have you come in and scan sort of at every point, right? So you can have a behind the wall scan of where your utility lines are run, where your gas lines are run, where, all of these different layers of information are to like a high degree of accuracy, correct?
Oh, yes, there's a couple of, you can use it for documentation throughout the construction progress if you want to. And also, one of the most popular ones is just pre-drywall scanning. So you know where all the utilities are, anywhere in the place.
That's
So if you ever have a problem, you're not chopping through drywall to find out where it might be. You can go right to the exact spot.
I see Brian's wheels turning.
Yeah.
Somebody explained it to me once, is that there was a leak. There was a leak that they thought was coming from a skylight. But once they looked at the scan, the pre-drywall scan, they figured out that there was actually piping in that area. And they were able to go right to that and find where the leak was. Everybody knows how challenging a leak can be. Leak can come from so many different places. So, again, the applications are mind-boggling what you can do with this, because it just keeps getting better, first of all. And people keep saying, what about this? What about that? Like, that's a great idea. I never thought of that, but yeah.
And you may not be able to answer this, but one of the challenges with technology is, say I have a pre-drywall scan done right now of a property that's under, being rehabbed. How long or what's the ability of having that scan sort of upgraded as the technology progresses, right? Because I have this scan, I may not have these walls opened again, but in 5 years, am I even going to be able to have a program that can open this file or convert it to something else to keep it usable? Are the companies, as they're developing the technology, taking that into account?
Sure. Well, this all lives in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So any upgrades they make will be automatically applied to the software. It's not like you have to buy a new program. It's all up in the cloud, like everything is these days. And you don't own it. It's owned by Matterport, but you have access to it.
Okay, so that might be an important consideration for some folks, is that, that's who owns that file.
And I guess you could call it a file, but basically a link. You get a link and you get an embed code. So you can actually have this play right on your website, so people would never even leave your website.
Is there a period of time, duration, years that we have the link, or is it in theory as long as Matterport's in business, which I've got to guess they're one of the leading companies in this, so they're going to be around for quite some time?
Right, as long as you have the link. I mean, there is a fee to keep that link, obviously. There's a hosting fee, but that's where they get their money. And if you have multiple properties, I'd recommend you, we would have you open your own Matterport account, and then we just put it in there, because it would be less expensive for you that way. I'm happy to manage it, but I'm gonna have a little extra fee in there for my management. But if you have multiple properties, it's worth it to have your own account.
And then maybe a segue too, the questions of price points, and obviously there's a lot of value here. Can you share with us a little bit about that? So as we're thinking about leveraging this tool, we can think about when it makes sense, when it doesn't, and I'm thinking there's less that it doesn't and more that it does. Can you talk us a little bit about price points and or packages?
Again, I hesitate to do that on an open forum because there's so many different applications for this.
Makes sense.
And it all depends on the client's needs and what their use case is. I'm happy to talk about it offline. Not a problem.
I mean, I think not to push you, but I think just general ballpark. I mean, are we talking thousands of dollars for an average apartment rental,
Bedroom.
or are we talking, we don't want to lock you in. And as I think I told you, these go out onto the web, and so somebody in 5 years could be listening to this and be
That's
like,
but
you said, but just a range, like a ballpark range of what you've seen. I think just because there's a perception that this is a very expensive process, that it's a lot of money, and people are trying to evaluate, is it worth doing this for even with all of these other things?
You can they start at like $200.
Okay. Okay.
Very reasonable for the amount of time, the showings you could save.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking 20 minutes at a showing, 10, 15 minutes there, 10, 15 minutes back at one showing. Depending what your alley rate is, you've made a real solid dent in that
Right.
$200, if not overtaken.
Right. That doesn't include the phone calls and the emails either.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, absolutely.
Right. So, and of course, again, that, with the sort of caveat that, it depends on the property, it depends on what extra add-ins you have, and, what else is going on. But it's a rather affordable way to manage a big problem that housing providers have, which is showing apartments.
Yep.
Yeah. I can see showing, scheduling, tenant, conflicts, safety, being a big one. We're going to the season where it's much darker, so we're gonna have limited time to show property in the right light. So yeah, I can see a series of benefits why we should all ponder this and leverage it.
And I think you just raised one, Brian, that we hadn't even mentioned before, that you can shoot these virtual tours in sort of the best light possible. And just I'm looking out my window today and it's gloomy and rainy, and property's not going to show the same as it does on a nice sunny day. So
plus the camera is such high resolution, and again has AI built into the editing process. So even on a gloomy day, it can make it look quite nice. Obviously, if it's dark outside, you'll see that it's dark, but the interior will still look great.
Excellent.
nice. Are there,
as we know, we can't depend on the weather.
right? Exactly.
I'm just hoping we don't get hail today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it also, reduces, people having to travel during inclement weather, having to cancel because of inclement weather. Like there's just, I think a lot of utilities for something like this, the, tenant being able to drop the exact link to the landlord of where a problem is, or an issue that they're having. That's huge. That's a piece I didn't even know you could do with these.
Yeah, I know we've got a couple of people who flip properties on today. I can see the names. Great to have everybody. That would be something, if I was seriously renovating, I would take that idea, which I hadn't even thought of, so we can better understand where the utilities are and potentially use them to help contractors better locate the issue, even potentially remotely.
And
Yep.
if you have a huge remodel, like I was saying, we can pull architectural files out of these models to give to your architect to help start a project.
Very interesting. Well, John, anything we haven't asked you that we should have asked you, or any particular uses that your clients have raved about that we haven't talked about?
Not really. The only thing I could say is that when I was talking about the smallest one that I ever did, that 100 square foot pop-up bar system, that has gotten, because we can track the views. We track all the statistics, and that to date has still gotten more views than any virtual tour I have done in the past 4+ years. And
Interesting.
it's because he markets it.
Right.
He uses it to market, and it works really well for him.
Very interesting.
Absolutely. And what a great way to also highlight any amenities that are at a property. I know as, more and more developments are happening, it feels like there's, storage lockers, there's, gyms, there's laundry rooms, there's all these other things that are associated with rental properties that would allow people to see, again, ahead of time, what does this look like?
That helps you stand out from the competition.
Yep.
John,
Absolutely.
anything you care to add to our guests and to the members?
Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. I've seen a lot of value, seen a lot of time savers, ideas that I haven't thought of. So I can, say that we'll be going back to our property management team and discussing how we can leverage this. So really, really appreciate that. And if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to ask them. Angela and I have, I think, one other really exciting topic to talk about today that probably almost deserves its own session. And that is the amazing job the state of Vermont telling us in mid-August that they chose to make a law effective in June. Yes, 2 months after, they made it effective. They told us that we had to discuss flooding and rental properties.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this was one of the things that we covered in the last session, in the last of these, the one that we did in August, and it was mentioned then that this law went into effect related to flood disclosures, that we were still waiting for the state to issue the form because the legislation tasked the state with creating a form. And I was just gonna screen share this here in so people can see it. Oh, wow, I got all kinds of stuff going on here on my backdrop. There we go. So this is the flood disclosure form that came out of that legislation. There is a separate one for mobile home parks. So if you are a mobile home park owner, there is a separate form that you would need to use. Both of these are available on the Landlords Association's website. I'm sure they will eventually be up on the Housing and Community Development website. They are not up there yet. And this form needs to be given to tenants at the time you're signing a lease with them. And I would also say if you're doing lease renewals, I would include this form as well at lease renewal time. And
I
it's
even thought of that. That is an excellent point. Thank you.
Yeah. It has one question that you have to answer. And that is whether any part of the rented premises is a FEMA mapped special flood hazard area. That's it. That's all the statute required. So this form has a lot of words to basically get you to that one question. There is a link, a direct link in the form to take you to that FEMA search engine. So you can see, you can search by address. I think it says you can search by latitude and longitude. If you have that for your properties, 2 thumbs up for you. Most of us have addresses. So you can search by address and the information in those maps is some areas are better than others. I know.
Yeah, Johnson was, I think newer maps came out in the last 2, 3, 4 months from FEMA. And it's great to tell that Johnson is not in a flood zone. So clearly the rivers had it wrong the last 3 times they flooded in the last 2 years.
Right. Right. And so you can see that your choices here are for yes, no, or no digital data available, right? So the area doesn't have data on the FEMA website. And there are places, Lyndonville is one, that comes up with no data. So it's this disclosure, and the disclosure law does not require you to disclose if you know it's flooded. Like, this was the
I just noticed
only,
that.
yeah, this was it. That was all that was in the law. Was this particular question. Now, do you have some sort of obligation to disclose that? Legally, I don't know. No, not really. I mean, we're in a weird gray area. But this is the form that you've got to use to do your flood disclosure. And it's not disclosure only if you're in that mapped special flood hazard area. It's for all properties. So you got to do it no matter what.
What are the ramifications? I mean, we should all do it, but one of the
Right.
things with the lead paint line, I hope the people on here know this. If I remember correctly, if we don't provide them the Vermont required, IRC forms, there could be $1,000 a day fine.
Right.
Any teeth in this that our members should be aware of, in addition to just doing it because it's the right thing to do?
There's a potential for a consumer protection violation that would come directly from the tenant if you didn't disclose. There's nothing in the statute itself related to the disclosure, just that you have to make the disclosure. So that means, it's going to fall within sort of other statute areas for enforcement. Could somebody argue that it's, violation of warranty of habitability for not providing this disclosure? I don't know. That might depend on the circumstances and the situation. So, we're kind of in this, it's a very weird area. And I am surprised that the law was as pared down as it was. I was not enamored with what was originally proposed because there were a lot of requirements in there, and many of them I did take issue with, which was, one of them was like, disclose if this property has ever flooded at any time. And I was like, well, how would somebody know that? Like, you could have a property that's 200 years old. Like, folks who own it now aren't necessarily going to know that. But I am surprised that the question about has it ever flooded while you've owned it didn't make it in the list. So
I'm baffled. And we've got a question just a second. And Becky, thank you for your question. There's some realtors on here, and the realtor form, which is already causing us mass issues because it's so poorly executed. People aren't familiar with it. I think it's giving false sense of security if they mention it's not in a zone, but it's got a creek on the property, stuff like that. And I am absolutely amazed they didn't have a question of has it flooded or not. But we do have a question, and Becky, thank you very much for the question. John, this is another great reason why you're not missing the real estate business, I'm guessing. But with the question from Becky is, we don't do lease renewals. They just become month to month. So should we give these FEMA forms to existing tenants?
It's not required. So I think, we talk with it in two different things, right? Stuff that's required and things that are good business practices.
Yep.
It's not required legally, the way the law was written, because it talks about at or before lease signing. I think it's a good business practice to provide these forms to existing tenants because you've just sort of closed the loop. You add it to whatever lease you have that's rolled month to month or, is with the relationship now. And it just, sort of closes the door on that piece of paperwork. So I don't think it's required. If you had a large number of units and you're dealing with turnovers, And leasing and lease renewals, I would say it's probably lower down on the priority list because you really want to get this included with those new leases and with any renewals you're sending out. But I think it's a good business practice for landlords to start sending these forms out to existing tenants as well.
I concur, and maybe it's yeah, I completely concur. I completely concur. Yeah, we've already seen it create some havoc on the real estate side of things.
Yeah, and there was quite a few more sort of moving pieces with the real estate one, more penalties and abilities of people to get out of contracts and things. All of that's missing from the non-existent in the residential disclosure section, residential rental disclosure.
Yeah, so I assume just a simple question. I'm going to get to the answer is it's okay. So if we use the realtor one, which has more information, it's probably going to be fine because it meets and exceeds this for rental properties.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Though this is the form they develop for rental properties. So just, make sure that you're covered with the question that's asked here because that's what was required under the statute.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you haven't actually ever been on the FEMA map webpage, it took me a minute to get oriented. I was looking with a landlord at their property and we had to zoom in, does this little coverage, does it go up onto the property? But you can play around with it and you can get the information you need. It just takes a little bit of time. And once you get used to what you're looking for and what you're looking at, I think it becomes a lot easier. But yeah.
Fun stuff.
Never a dull moment.
Nope, absolutely. Keeps it interesting. Angela, anything else that comes to mind that we should share today before we thank everybody?
I will just mention really quickly, there was the Treasury Department survey that I think I was talking about the last time we were on. They have released that survey. There's a link on the Landlords Association website to get to that. So if you are interested in taking a look and participating in that, I'm sure the folks at the Treasury would be happy to do that. It's related to payment reporting and whether folks are using card processing systems, basically how they're collecting rents and whether those payments are getting reported out to a credit bureau or credit reporting agency. It was, again, one of the things the legislature tasked them with studying.
Anything on the eviction committee? That's not the probably right term for that, but the committee that was getting together to look at evictions and the processes. Any updates on that?
Nope. Other than I'm on the committee. So my name appears on the committee list of participants. The committee was supposed to have a first meeting by the end of August. I still do not have any meetings on my calendar. So I don't really know what the holdup is, but yep.
Interesting.
Stay tuned, TBD.
Very interesting. Folks, just as a reminder, this is all great times to get involved and advocate for what we do. I think we provide tremendous values to community members and providing the housing that we do. John, I'd love to thank you for coming here today because I walked away with some models and systems I want to implement in our property management company to save time, bring more value to our, clients, community members, as well as employees. And Angela, I can't stress enough, thank you for dealing with the bureaucracy down in Montpelier. Every now and then I get think about getting into politics, and then I think of these conversations, and it brings, common sense to my world. And on behalf of all our members, thank you for making the time. If there's any additional topics, things that we could talk about to bring value to your efforts to provide housing in the community, we would greatly appreciate it. Again, I'm Brian Armstrong with Keller Williams Vermont and Strong Will Property Management. John, great to see you. Glad to see you're not missing real estate too much.
I love hearing about all the trials and tribulations.
Right. Thank you, John, for participating. I will send you a link of this when we get it loaded up on the YouTube channel. And I think for folks that are still on here, we're working to secure somebody to come in for October to talk about fiber internet and why it's a good idea to get your building wired with fiber capabilities. Again, talking about sort of amenities and how we now consume data and how we use data as occupants of said buildings. So we're still trying to nail down those details, but
We look forward to it.
yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, everybody have a great rest of the day. Stay grateful. And thank you for all you do in our community to provide housing.
And we'll see everybody next month.
Thanks again.
Bye.